Live, pulling up my notes, and here we go. It's Corley Moore, Firehouse Vigilance. This is Weekly Scrap number 67. Special guest tonight is Daryl Liggins, 28-year veteran of the fire service, currently a captain in Oakland, California, FDIC hot instructor, Firehouse International, hot engine operations, right now a monthly contributor to Fire Engineering Magazine. He does the Hump Day Hangout podcast, current team member of Stretching for Success training group that is headed back to FDIC when they finally get going again. You have seen him on Elkhart, Brass Tacks, and Hard Facts. He loves discussing hose, nozzle, systems, best practices, which is a lot of what I want to talk to him about today and pick your brain about. So, Captain Daryl Liggins, it's my pleasure to have you on today as the guest of Weekly Scrap number 67.
Oh, thank you. That's quite an introduction. I don't feel like I always do that much, but yeah, when time flies and over that amount of time, I've had the good fortune to be involved with a lot of different stuff I would have never thought I could be involved in. Just to tell you a little bit about myself, and I think probably a lot of the listeners, when I saw the list of people listening, we see a lot of the same people. You know, sometimes we're speaking to the same choir, but I'm glad everybody's listening in. I'm 28-year veteran, as you said. I'm 48 years old, and I'm on the downhill slide. I've only got a year or two left till my pension maxes out, and I still love the job every bit as the day I started, which I found the right occupation. That's
Right on.
absolute. I'm married. I've got two beautiful daughters, and I'm kind of in a unique situation right now. I'm down here at a hotel room because I have to socially distance from the house, but I'll tell you a little bit more about that at the end of the show.
Okay, perfect.
I think probably a lot of the listeners are probably in a libation right now. So I thought I would share in the social lubricant. One of my favorites here is Pliny the Elder. I'm in California, so this is from the Sonoma Valley. So
local.
I'll share this IPA
Right.
during the podcast. I think that'd be good.
So
Maybe I'll review it.
Okay. Are you a beer connoisseur?
No, actually, anybody that knows me knows I'm a lightweight. I rarely drink at all. Maybe one a month, if that.
Right on.
But this has been a week where this is well deserved. I just got out of the firehouse from 7 days in a row, and in the morning I go back to 4 in a row.
Wow. So you are staying hooked up. So I got to squeeze the have you in as a guest here right in between. So thank you for taking the time for that. To everyone watching live, if you have questions for Daryl or myself, please don't hesitate to send them in the comments and I will throw them at him. So there we go. You've got it. The hotel room, the local beer, and we're ready to kick this off. Are you ready?
Yeah, absolutely.
So first off, I want to say Happy New Year's. You are the first guest of 2021. So congratulations for that accomplishment. I cannot say how ready I am personally for the reset of the year that was 2020 and hopefully having a better year moving forward. So how have you been dealing, obviously 7 days on and going back for 4. How's the craziness of 2020 been for you?
Well, I think we're all pretty much in the same boat. Things are ramping up a little bit out where I am. We've had, we're a medium-sized department, around 500 members or so, and we just had about 30 members that tested positive, because I know, COVID's the center of attention for 2020, along with riots and election stuff and everything else.
Right.
But over the last 2 weeks, we've had 15 people, which was more than the total of the rest of the year. But how I've been is grateful. I've had a lot of good time with my family. I'm grateful to have my wife and my kids there. We have a roof over our head. We both have our jobs. Not everybody is so lucky. And when we started this year, my wife had, the kids and myself and her every morning read a little thing of what we're grateful for. And it was just a constant reminder of that day that we have something not everybody else has. So 2020 was all in all just a fine year.
pretty good. I like the positivity, so I do. I really do. I
We
appreciate.
have we always have a choice if we're going to be negative or positive, right?
I like it. I like it a lot.
Happiness is a choice.
Right out the gate, I don't. Hannah Elliott. I don't know if you know, but Hannah Elliott loves to throw questions at the guests, and so right out the gate, she is throwing one at you and said, "Daryl, can we start with your participation of the core group of Andy ambassadors?" So,
Wow. You know, I never knew I was really thought of as a Andy ambassador because a lot of people try and carry this message on, and I think it was just the timing of the whole situation. Andrew Fredericks, uh, as you all know, and if someone doesn't know the name Andrew Fredericks out there, please look it up and read his articles. When I was coming in the fire service, his name was really meant something to me because we didn't have YouTube videos. We had VHS tapes if we went to
right.
a large conference and got to watch a video at the conference, and we had periodicals, Fire Engineering and Firehouse magazine. And when I started reading Andy's articles, a lot of that information just made so much sense to me. It was also in sharp contrast to what I was looking at. It was intuitive information that made sense. And in 2001, unfortunately, we lost Andy, but earlier that year, I got to have dinner with him. It was the one and only time I got to meet him. And, at the end of dinner, they brought out this cherries flambe, and everybody at the table yelled, "Straight stream." And he looked at me and said, solid stream is distinctly different than a straight stream. He was always, turned on to hose and nozzles, and I got to ask him a lot of questions about, high-rise hose and nozzle packages and things, and those conversations really stuck with me and made sense. So as time went on, after he passed, I got kind of brought into the fold from my good friend Dave McGrail to teach at FDIC along with that crew. And, we were known as Andy's ambassadors. And to this day, we're still kind of carrying on the work that he started. You'd be very proud of what's going on in the fire service today.
No doubt about it. That's awesome, man. That is awesome. Yeah, so I got a little bit about you, and some of the questions that I'm going to be asking are that's kind of the foundation for some of the questions I'll be asking. Because I was going to say, how did you get so into hose and nozzles and stuff? And you're kind of touching on those influences early on, so that's pretty amazing. You moved. This is something that Brian brushed on me. You moved from suburbia to what most would call a large department. It's funny to hear you say it's a medium-sized department, but.
Well, our city manager she said something that kind of stuck with me and said, Oakland is a city that's punching above its weight class.
There you go.
It is a medium-sized department. We got 24 engines, 7 trucks, population less than 500,000. But we have all the issues that, big cities deal with, with the riots and the fires. And it's a city of the haves and have-nots. We have some of the nicest, richest, real estate in the country, along with some of the most impoverished, most violent areas, that we have going on in this country. So it spans the gamut. So I think moving on, just to talk about, I think you wanted to talk about suburbia versus, somewhat large department. I worked in Redwood City. That's where I got my start at, young age of 20 years old, when I never thought I'd be 48, balding and failing eyesight. I got my first readers the other day.
There you go.
I absolutely loved it. And when I made the move, I really struggled with that decision. And people in my department know I mention Redwood City quite often. It's because I'm really proud of the work they do. I was really proud of that city, and it got me a start. And I wouldn't be where I am if it wasn't for those lessons and that great start. I just couldn't, I wanted more. I wanted more of what I already had. And it was when I looked at the news every morning, I would see San Francisco or Oakland going to jobs, and I knew, maybe it's not the right decision, but it was a decision I had to make for myself, where I'd always wonder what would it have been like.
Right.
You know,
That's awesome. And obviously it was a good decision, especially, this far down. Differences and similarities in the challenges that the two departments kind of face.
yeah, you know what? It's mostly more challenges than similarities. It's like a chief in Redwood City told me when I said I was going, is it's like steering a big ship over there, and change comes very slow. Basic training can take a very long time because you have a lot of people to get through things. If we want to do, you know, you know, SEBA training, we've got to do this for weeks. It's not just a quick ABC shift, 2 engines in the morning and 3 in the afternoon, and it's wrapped up and we could move on. And it's more difficult to really get into the weeds and the details of, all things fire service, because you just don't have time to do that. So you have to have people in their own specialties, whether it's a hazmat company, rescue company, water rescue, where in a smaller department, that you got to trim the fat. Everybody's got to know everything pretty much. You're hiring 2 or 3 people at a time, and everybody's got to be on. Not that we have room for fat in a larger department, but we have a lot of room for people just to specialize in something and maybe not be as specialized in other things.
Sure. No, I like my department's 4 stations, 4 engines, 2 ladders. So it would qualify as a small department. And I can only imagine the microcultures that would form in a larger department when you have that big of a personnel, and how do you keep a cohesive vision going, and the leadership challenges with that size. So
that is a challenge.
You are the chairman of your department's hose and nozzle committee. So obviously Andrew Fredericks had some influence on you being infatuated with that, or getting your interest going in that. So talk to me about, is it something in the air in Oakland, something in the water? Because there's you and Dennis Laguerre, and you guys are pretty much, why would you say it? Experts would be the right term. So,
well, it's hard for me to think of myself as an expert, because everything I know I've learned from other people. I'll roll back the clock a little bit for you, because you're asking like how did we get involved. I owe a lot to my very first engine company in Redwood City. I had a captain, his name was Jim Skinner, and from my first day out of the academy, that company was going through hose and nozzle evaluation, well, mostly nozzle evaluation at that time. And it was looked at as like this radical change that, only San Francisco to the north of us was doing. And that was looking at, going to like a smoothbore nozzle and going away from what we were currently using as automatic nozzles.
Right.
So every day we had, Elkhart, Akron, TFT, showing us all their stuff. We were flowing water at this park across the street every day. We flowed water. And also I had to be an engineer in that department. So I really had to understand, water flow and hydraulics. And I'll get into this a little early, because I know you like to ask about books, but he gave me this book, Fire Stream Management Handbook of Tactics, which is like impossible to find now. So probably jumped the gun on that. And when Jim Skinner gave it to me, he said, hey, don't say I never gave you anything. And, I still have it, 28 years later, with highlights and everything. And it really explained in detail all the differences, because now I'm part of this company that might be implementing new equipment. And I just have the personality, or, I guess when I took the ASVAB test in high school, the one area I scored, high on was just mechanical aptitude.
Okay.
Now, I'm not someone that builds stuff. I'm not that handy guy that's like building cars and stuff like that. but I do understand how things work. And that coupled with Andy's articles really gave me an explanation that, sometimes the beauty is in the simplicity of design. And when we add other complications, it may not be good for the type of work that we're doing. So we did. We made that change. I got to experience using automatic nozzles, 1 3/4 to now using 7/8 tips and lower pressure combination nozzles. And I made the leap across the bay. We were getting a lot more work at that time. They were using 1.5 and 100 PSI combination nozzles.
Right on.
So you mentioned Dennis Laguerre, and Dennis and I, worked together for many years, but a name you didn't mention is Jay Camella. Jay Camella was really someone that saw something in me, and maybe it's just because I was an interested party, but he was evaluating hose and nozzles at that time. And I was on probation and went to him and said, hey, I'm really interested in helping out if I can. I didn't want to, do stuff being seen as the new guy doing something they shouldn't do.
Right.
But Jay has been the most influential person in the Oakland Fire Department that has made a lot of improvements with not only our engine equipment, but truck equipment. None of this would have happened. There would probably be no Dennis Laguerre or Daryl Liggins doing this type of stuff if it wasn't for Jay. And we had the support of our operations chief. He was a battalion chief at the time, and I told him the same thing. And he quickly brought me on board and then named me as chair of the hose and nozzle committee, 2 years in the department.
Wow.
Unfortunately, it was on the heels of a line of duty death we had, where one of the contributing factors was in the Board of Inquiry report, which I think it predated NIOSH reports,
right?
If I'm not mistaken. It cited our water volume. We had like 8 1.5 and a 2.5 on this building that had a lot of renovations, and it burned long enough that the ledger boards gave way and collapsed the second floor, and unfortunately killed a lieutenant named Tracy Toomey, and it ended the career of 2 others. One who we lost later because of depression and suicide, but that was his last day on the job, and things just spiraled downhill. So the battalion chief was very motivated to correct that area of concern in the Board of Inquiry report. And with that said, when I asked to do that, the battalion chief said, you're not going to make any friends doing this. So some people may be very unhappy, with the changes that are coming. And that was certainly the case. He was not mistaken there, but it was the right thing to do. And it did improve, our engine company operation. So that's really how I got my start, with my involvement in Oakland, and from there, things just kind of, built up. Jay had already had a connection with nearly everyone in the fire service. That's where I got introduced to, Dave McGrail and, Ray McCormick. He introduced me to Andy. And he took me to my first FDIC, where, I saw a fire service that I had, experience I had never experienced before.
Right, the kind you read about and dream about, and then it's like right there. That is awesome. The reverberation. Now you say the name Jay Camilla. Is that the Camilla grip, the Camilla lock? Is that his technique?
Well, that is what I would believe is Brian Brush giving credit to Jay, because Jay would teach this, but Jay wouldn't take any credit for that.
Gotcha.
He'd say he learned it from
Okay.
Andy and other guys, and that's the beauty of the group of people. We all get to spend some time with and teach with, is they're all humble and nobody wants to take credit for anything. They're all just passing along information and learning as we go. So yeah, Jay wouldn't say it's the Camella lock, but I know why Brian's saying that.
Okay. Okay. And then that's the crazy thing is because every week I get to talk to someone who is a fire service leader, and every week it is one of the most humble and gracious people that I've ever got to talk to. No exception right now as I talk to you and you say, well, I'm not an expert. I'm just a student. And I mean, it's just that repetitive personality trait in these fire service leaders that I get to talk to. That's just amazing. So, that plays right into that whole theme of the weekly scrap and the guests that I have on. I want to kick it at you and say common mistakes that firefighters make, or maybe mistakes that you made when you were trying to implement change, as far as when it comes to hose, loads, deployment models, nozzle choice. Just when you're trying to implement change, the mistakes you learned from, or lessons learned is I guess what I'm after. Just run with that wherever you want to go.
Okay. Yeah. And this could be lengthy, but I'll try not to keep it too lengthy because I've had the fortune to be part of change in many organizations, not just my own, but other Bay Area departments and other, consulting that, I get called for, and everybody's dealing with similar things. You generally have a real core group of people that got inspired somehow and they want to make some type of change. And for some reason, the hose and nozzle piece of equipment brings about the most resistance with other coworkers. I mean, we can go from this saw to, a different model saw or this generator to that. But it's not looked upon as a change. It's just looked upon as an improvement. And I think the first mistake is approaching it as a change instead of improving upon what we already do. And our former operations chief, he said that. He said, hey, we're not looking for a wholesale change. We're just looking to, improve what we're already doing. The other thing is, coming back energetic from a conference, learning something, and you're ready to go, and just kind of going too fast. You got to realize this is going to be a long journey. You need to educate yourself as much as you can, and get everything laid out for administration. You don't want to just have the idea at the kitchen table. Right. You want to be able to take that package to admin and say, this is why it's safer. This is why it's more effective. This is why it's more efficient. This is the benefits to you if we do it. And this is the consequences if we don't do this. And I've already laid out a plan of how we can train everybody. And this is going to be, the cost or the savings to do this. And you can have the science and data behind you. We have UL and NIST or other organizations. You're going to have to do the homework before you go forward, because if you just put it on their desk and wait for it to happen, it's not going to happen. The other, failure I would say is just not really realizing the culture. Like you said, we're big enough where each firehouse has its own culture, or, certain areas of the city has its own culture. Some are more accepting of certain things than others. And realizing the power of the opposition, who is generally not as knowledgeable in that subject, but they still have a very powerful voice, and they want to be involved. So somehow having people involved in the change rather than having it put on them. Nobody wants to just have change put on them. They have to be involved in the change. And I think at some points I failed to recognize the history, traditions, and that culture and how it would respond to that type of change. And the other thing I failed to realize, and I realize now, is it's not about the equipment. I don't think it's about changing the equipment. It's about changing people and changing people's minds mentally around what we're after. And if people feel comfortable with that, it's going to be more accepting. And there's plenty of examples where you change a piece of equipment, but people are just going to choose to not use it. Or, and I'll tell you a harsh story. I was a probationary at a double house. And at that time, there was a field test of 1 3/4 with a 15/16 at every double house engine.
Okay.
I am on probation. I'm excited about it. I've already experienced this, in my previous department. And I'm told, hey, don't touch that. That's that stuff Jay is trying to kill us with. That harsh.
Right.
And it's like completely not open-minded because it wasn't about the equipment. I think the same response could have occurred if we were using a smoothbore hose and nozzle system and we were trying to go to a combination nozzle. It's because of the way it was changing. And when I thought about that is when we were doing some in-service training for the city of San Francisco, McGrail got invited over there when they were implementing their standpipe hose and nozzle packages. And Jay and I went over there, assisting during that training. And they are a smoothbore nozzle fire department through and through. And Dave McGrail had some combination nozzles out. And they immediately thought that this was going to be a group of instructors trying to change into a combination nozzle. One guy came up and he's like, hey, we're not really interested in that. We like what we use over here, And it's like, calm down. I think we're on the same page, but it's just a prop for, showing some other issues with that. So, to summarize it up is just realize that you want buy-in from the larger group, not just administration or whoever's going to rubber stamp and okay that change. At the end of the day, it's people that are going to be using that equipment.
Nice. Oh, dude, brilliant. And I got to catch you up on everything here. So I got some questions to throw at you. First, I'm going to read the compliments and comments, which is Garrett Rice has chimed in and said, learned so much from Daryl and Jay in Vegas at the High Rise Conference. Grateful to have had the opportunity. Was the beginning of peeling back the onion of water delivery. And a lot of people agree with that comment and gave it some likes. And then Garrett also said that's a brilliant quote. It's people, not equipment. So getting some compliments. Changing equipment is easy. Influencing change of opinions and understanding is the challenge. And that's from Kevin McLean. And so coming at you. Now, here comes some questions. And any of these you can say pass on or that takes too long to answer. But they're coming at you now. So Joey Hayes says, as a hose guy, what's your view on the difference between, and this is outside my realm of understanding everything, so on the difference between a EPDM rubber and a through-the-weave nitrile PVC interliner?
I'm going to pass on that. And what I'm going to say is that is a Dennis Laguerre question. I never really got into the weeds of the manufacturing and all of that. For me, it's how does it feel in my hands? It's like I don't need to know exactly how it's made. Give it to me. Let me see how it is. Let's hook it to a pumper and flow some water, which is what I love about being able to go to different conferences in different areas of the country, and because I get to use a lot of different stuff, and I just know if it seems to work well in my hand. But,
yes.
Yeah, that's all I have to say.
100%, man. There's no. You could tell me all day long the technical specifications of something or how it's made or the extrusion process, but let me feel it, let me touch it, let me bend it around a corner, and let me see how it reacts. So
yeah, and I'll tell you what. Even among different, instructors, even sometimes we have differences of opinion. One of the questions I'd ask Andy, because at the time, Jay and I had a difference of opinion between the 15/16 where I preferred the 7/8. Okay, so seems like we're splitting hairs, but I really preferred the 7/8 over the 15/16 and thought that nozzle, the 15/16, really wouldn't be as popular today if it didn't have that 4-letter fire department behind it, that FDNY, which made it very, very popular. But when I have it in my hands and I'm using them both, the 7/8 made more sense to me. And, it's been 28 years since we went to it, early on in my career in Redwood. Still, everything I'm learning, even from the UL, uh, it still, cats me out, I guess I could say. I think it's the best choice. That's my opinion, but there's a lot to back that up.
Sure, sure, and a lot
But
of a lot of opinions match
again,
it.
all
Uh,
right.
Here's another one for you, which is from Luis Manuel Corona. Luis, but it says, now this one is right along the lines of 7/8, 15, 16. So he said, so many different hoses. Now, in your opinion, what is the best hose? 1 3/4, 2, and 2.5 inch.
Well, it really depends on what you're trying to accomplish, and this is where I think people have to know their own specific community and their staffing. They're all different animals. I want, for one, I've never been a big fan of 2 inch hose. I know it's popular among even some of my peers. It always felt like this, not quite a big line, but too large for just a regular small line. A bit of a compromise. Um, but some people are getting some pretty impressive, flows out of it. Nobody likes using 2.5. 2.5 is it's very difficult. We use it. It's required at a lot of certain types of fires. But I'm very excited for 2 1/4. I think that the 2 1/4 inch hose, I think, is same flows as a 2.5, but it's really a game changer in the additional maneuverability, and that's the next on my agenda, trying to implement into the Oakland Fire Department. I think we're going to get it done because there's a lot of support. But just modern 2.5 is more like 2 3/4, and it's just very difficult. But yeah, 1 3/4. I've been shocked at how much fire volume you can put out with an 1 3/4 and a 7/8 tip. It could put out a tremendous amount of fire, quickly controlled. We've had people use that on fires where I thought that should have been a 2.5, but when I'm looking at all these helmet cam videos and stuff people are doing, it's like, I can't argue with the results. That was pretty impressive.
Right.
That was pretty impressive. But the 2 inch, I guess part of my thought process with a lot of engine operations is simplicity. And that's where I also struggle with 2 inches. I don't want a third size line,
Right.
because sometimes it's already difficult enough to pull the big line when that's needed. And so that choice of, a small line and a big line, I think is adequate for most fire departments.
No, I love Brush's analogy between the calibers when he does his, the 22 moving to the 357. You got your small mobile and then you move into the big gun. So you got to have that difference between them.
I got to say, this beer has got a great balance of hops and malt. It's really delicious. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, I was waiting to get the review on the IPA. Fire by Trade said, thank you, Daryl. Ryan King said the two things firefighters hate, change and the way things are. So definitely both very true. Jeffrey Bryan Jr. said, lucky to have you on the Fire Nuggets board. Thank you for all you do, Daryl. The fire service is blessed to have humble and passionate people like you. I will read it correctly eventually. All right. Coming back at you is, what is the, and I try to word this question right, what is the biggest misconception you had when you started, or something that you learned along the way when it comes to hose, nozzles, hydraulics? Was there any surprises from where you started in your beliefs?
When you sent this question, I've thought about it, throughout the day, and I definitely was taught things that were misconceptions, that everything I learned along the way showed that it was wrong. Things like penciling,
Right,
or fog to protect yourself, right to fight and left to live. But I questioned all those things right from the beginning. And I think that was part of what had me reading fire engineering all the time, magazines, periodicals, and these books, and talking to other, people throughout the fire service. And a lot of what I thought and learned along the way, it's just has supported, all these UL studies. It's just supporting a lot of stuff that many of us already had believed in.
Right.
I didn't have, I started without the most experience in some regards, because when we were making the changes in Oakland, I had, like I said, year 2 on the job. We were going to fires, no doubt, but I had been in the fire service 7 years at that time. It's not a tremendous amount of experience, so I didn't experience all these things like, hey, I've never had to do this to protect myself or whatever. But other people did have a tremendous amount of experience. And I'm listening to a lot of these senior people that were saying what they needed to do on certain fires. And that was their experience. But one thing I've learned is your experience isn't always truth. If I can kind of word this right, it was what you've experienced. And if somebody enters a room and they've got this on a wide fog pattern and they're just getting beat down with additional heat, steam coming down on them, and they feel like this is an extreme amount of heat and they have to turn it wider, and now the room, is, the fire's finally going out and things are cooling down. It felt like they may have felt like, hey, I had to turn this to a wider pattern to protect myself. This was, such a radical situation. That was their experience, and that's their truth. But it didn't compare it to what the alternative would have been. If the reach of the stream was used, if there was minimal air entrainment in that stream, we now know with UL studies and other experiences now using this equipment, we wouldn't have had that initial experience of being beat down with steam and this heat banking down on us, which firefighters had to deal with for a very long time. So, that is what it is. I think we need to really take a close look at what our experience is and what that means. Sorry to be fumbling my words, but
you're good.
We have to look at our experience with a critical eye and look back at that fire and think, what did I actually just experience right there at that fire? And what would the alternative have been if I used a different piece of equipment or a different technique?
Right. No, I love what you led off with, which is your experience isn't always the truth. Man, if that's just one thing people can run that filter through on their anecdotal evidence, that they use to base their beliefs on. I love that. I've got one coming at you from Brian Brushier himself from Fire by Trade. He said, Corley, a few years back, I was home and was watching the news and saw Daryl being taken from a fire scene to an ambulance. He says, would you be willing to share that story, Daryl, and the lesson?
Which fire was that?
That's all the information he gave me so far.
It was probably Telegraph is what he's talking about, which is a fire we had in a 3-story apartment building with a well-involved fire on the 3rd floor. It was venting out of like 4 windows, a balloon frame apartment building, a top floor fire, good fire. I was at 3 engine. We were first due on the 2nd alarm. And when we got there, fire still heavily venting out the windows, which I found unusual. Most of the time, it's going to be like cancel the 2nd alarm and the fire's knocked. So it's like, okay, that's the first clue something's not right, because we're not getting the results we normally get at this type of fire. At the doorway, I'm met by a guy, Dan Sarna, one of our best. Everybody in Oakland would say he's one of our best. And he met me at the door. He said, "Hey, Daryl, there's a lot of stuff in the apartment. We can't get in. We've been trying to squeeze in. They're coming out for new bottles." And it's like, wow, if Dan's not getting in there, and another guy we had, Chuck Accurso, who was this, stout Marine at the time, a gunner from a helicopter, he couldn't get in there either, along with Dan. And so I went up to the third floor with my crew. Once we reached the third floor, I get my mask on. I put on my helmet without the chin strap properly on. And my crew's masking up on the staircase. And what we were told to do is search for a missing man who ended up being deceased in the fire department. As I'm on the hallway, I look back at my firefighter and I'm thinking, hey, hurry up. Come on, we got to get going here. And I hear a whoosh and I got fire in my mask. I drop down to the floor thinking, oh, okay, let me get under the fire. And when I get to the floor, I'm still in fire. I still see, fire's inches from my face. And I think to myself, what just happened? Stay calm, make it to the stairs. Stay calm, make it to the stairs. And I start crawling and I think for a second, I hope this is the direction of the stairs. Wow. Pretty much do like a head first slide down the stairs. Couldn't find one member of my crew. Another member, I see his face is badly burned. He has skin grafts. He was my classmate. I'll just tell you what happened. I was on the wrong end of a fog nozzle on that. They couldn't get in that apartment. A line was taken into the adjoining apartment, and the wall was breached it was tactically poorly communicated. It was a good tactic. However, we needed to communicate that we can't make it in, and okay, close the apartment door, and we could breach a wall or get water in the window, which would probably been even a quicker effective way. But that line taken through that party wall was in a fog stream, and it just blew that fire right out down the hallway. I was at the far end of the hallway from this apartment. It lit the apartment on the other side of me. It lit the kitchen on fire.
Oh, wow.
So when we started hearing about can you not push fire and things like that, a lot of those studies initially were straight and solid streams. But if you're using a fog stream, you're moving a tremendous amount of air. And it can not only harm firefighters, it can harm civilians as well. So, I had some burns to the ears and stuff. I wasn't hospitalized, but I was out for a while. Luckily, I didn't have to have skin grafts. It didn't slow me down, but it was, it was definitely a lesson learned. So, thanks, Brian. It was 2006, a month after I got married. I was only an officer for about 3 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Hard on me. But time flies, now here it is like 14 years later.
No doubt. Time flies. Wow. No, thanks for sharing that story. The lessons learned, especially like you said, everybody talks about coordinated ventilation, but coordinated fire attack can be so important. I mean, obviously, crazy. Common mistakes. What is the biggest? Yes, I like it. You have. All right. I wanted to throw this question at you, so I was really happy when you said it was okay. It was a go. Which is, you have a magic wand, complete control, and no budget restrictions. I want you to talk to me about the perfect engine design setup according to Daryl Liggins.
Well, for where I work, I'd probably take a old FDNY 1980s Mac with an open cab, a simple low hose bed, and a leather helmet in every seat there. But the most important thing on that engine I would have is 6 members, because it's the firefighters that are taking care of business, not the rig. But realistically, what would I want? I don't design engines. I'm not part of that. We
Sure.
do have but I think fire engines today, the hose beds are just, it's like hoses secondary or something. They're way up there. Some have like ladders. You got to step up on a, tailboard just to reach the top. And it's just, let's get those hose beds lower. We can do that. We don't have to have hose up in the sky. Static loads, absolutely. I'm a huge fan of static loads. I think that is a very simple way to operate. And what's funny is you said no budget, and a lot of the things that people like Laguerre advocate for, or other engine instructors are advocating for, are lower budget.
Mm-hmm.
Price a smoothbore tip compared to a combination nozzle or an automatic nozzle. It's far less money. Static beds, you don't need as much hose as you need if you have several pre-connects of every length, for each situation. You've got your 150, 200, 250, and 300. And that adds up to a lot more hose than having some static beds. So I would have a very simple engine with some static beds, smoothbore nozzles, and I'll give them their leather helmets.
So it sounds
give me enough manpower, firefighter power to take care of business.
Dude, I love that part of your answer the best when you said, give me 6 firefighters, because that's what's going to make it happen. That's twice you pointed at the people and said, this is what matters. So I love that. And I do like the keep it simple, stupid, basically answer that you have of static hose beds, smooth bores, and let's go to work. I love that. Switching veins on you, I want to discuss, you've talked about it a little bit, civil unrest, and Oakland has seen its share over the years. There is no doubt about it. Not just focusing on the negative, but mainly like community trust. I wanted to hit you on how important your thoughts on how important that is, community trust between the fire department and the citizens.
Well, I'm definitely working in a city where community trust is everything. My district, we had a shooting. They ended up making a movie about where Oscar Grant, I think they call the movie Fruitvale Station. That's just blocks from my station, where an officer ended up, killing a unarmed black man. Whether it was an accident or purposeful can be argued. However, the community, we had some civil unrest downtown on many occasions during that trial. We've had Occupy in Oakland. We've had groups saying F the police every weekend, where they had to have public safety beefed up. And my district now, and a lot of part of the city and many other cities are, businesses have just left the plywood up. The plywood's just on the building. It's not vacant, but they're tired of putting up plywood and taking it down.
Sure.
However, as the fire department, I don't see anybody saying defund the fire department. And that's what our union president said. There's a lot of people upset at police or questioning their tactics or it's not a good time to be a police officer. That's for sure. But on the firefighting end of it, I've seen still a lot of public trust, a lot of public support, and we haven't had that negativity towards the fire department throughout all of these things. People still support us and thank us. I was on a shooting last night, and these people on the sidewalk was kind of unusual. We get the guy on the board, give him the ambulance takes off, and they said, that was a 4-minute response time, and they all start clapping. It was just like, well, this is kind of odd.
Right.
But they were, there's a lot of support for firefighters. And so I think we just need to keep doing what we're doing. I think that says a lot, that people really like the work that we do.
I do like it. Now then, since you have instructed, you've been a hot instructor, FDIC, like you said earlier in your introduction, Firehouse International, you go around, you consult. What are the biggest challenges you have faced in teaching in the fire service? And do you have tips for others who want to teach?
Well, yeah, I have had the fortune to go around to many different, classes and be an adjunct instructor for some of a lot of different guys. But the biggest challenge is usually time. A lot of times, and I know Walt Lewis talked about this in his podcast with you, that having a time restraint is a lot of times a hindrance, rather than just having as much time as you need to teach the material until it's taught correctly. So having enough time, and then the student instructor ratio. It's another challenge, because a lot of the conferences have a budget to meet. You don't want to, be in the red. And then with engine operations, making it realistic. Once you get into live fire and things like that, there's a lot of liability, EPA, things start getting more difficult when you introduce smoke and fire and try and make things realistic. And we have guys doing good things like Jim McCormick up there in Indianapolis, doing some good realistic training where, it takes a week to do some of the drills they do. I was part of a class in Carroll Stream, Illinois. That's where former Chicago Commissioner Bob Hoff is the chief of that department. And they got a wonderful tower that's actually attached to the firehouse. And a good friend of mine, Jimmy Sunig, who's in Chicago Fire Department, helps organize a class up there. And we did a 1-week engine class. It goes on every year. Very low student count, a high number of instructors. And it was hands-on training for 5 days of standpipes, stretching lines, flowing lines, and using thermal imagers. And I love it as an instructor because I think it makes me a better engine officer because I'm getting a lot of reps in the smoke, with the and knowing how to keep accountability of people on the line. And I think that's what it takes. I think, Chief Lewis talked about we have to spend money on people to provide good training, and it would take a good sized budget to run your organization through that type of training. They would have to do it off duty. It would take a big time, but the payoff is huge, and it's something that, it's something that keeps me, inspired to continue doing this type of stuff because it makes me better.
That's awesome, man. And every time I go and experience a conference, a hot class, or a teach, or give a presentation, that's the main takeaway is how much you learn by doing that. And so it's crazy how it is. Now then, I have a great. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think what a lot of people are going to have to take from a hot class is this is just we're scratching the surface. It's gathering some ideas that you're going to have to build upon back, in your own department. It's an area where you can get ideas and a lot of time to talk to other people from other organizations and, kind of get your brain power together of how you can implement some of this stuff and how you could build upon it and what pertains to your organization versus other organizations. So
Sure. And it goes full circle back to your one of the original things I asked you about implementing that change in the department. When you take it to the admin, like you said, and have done all the work and say, here's the solution, here's what we need to do. You do the work, and the same thing, you go to the hot class and you bring it back and then do the work. So I love how you brought it like full circle back around to there. So now then, 28 years in the fire service, I got to ask you this question because I've asked it a lot, but I want to know, what are your keys for staying engaged and motivated?
Well, that's not anything that could be taught or told. I don't think told to somebody about how they could stay engaged and motivated. Motivation, an engineer I recently worked with was saying, motivation and inspiration are two different things. And inspiration, you can inspire somebody, but I don't know if you could motivate somebody. Motivation is, they're going to have to figure out, be self-motivated, but that comes from being inspired from something. And I've continuously been inspired by a lot of the people that I've been able to have the good fortune to teach with. I mean, Brian Brush and I met in, Boise, Idaho, when he was a student taking a class from Jim Camella. And it's inspiring to see what he's done with it. Now he's got, fire by trade, and that seed planted is made the fire service a safer, more effective and efficient place because of all the work that class did. Andy's work has, how many times his articles have inspired so many people and motivated so many people to carry on a lot of work. The work UL is doing may not have happened if it wasn't for an Andrew Fredericks or a Jerry Tracy working along with Andrew Fredericks. So I've always been into this job and it's never changed. So I've never felt like I had to do any work to be motivated or inspired. I've just always been very curious about how things work. And I like to have answers. My wife would tell you I just obsess on, we just bought a bunch of rogue equipment to build a garage gym, and I'm up here researching, kettlebells, dumbbells, barbells. And it's like, she's like, just make a decision and buy it. But that's just not in my personality. Right. I want to know, I want to get the best thing. And I've been like that with hose and nozzles and hydraulics and engine operations. What's the best thing? What's the most efficient thing? And it's kind of unique that the most simple equipment, a smoothbore nozzle is very similar. It's the same nozzle they used when the Oakland Fire Department was established in 1867.
Right.
So it doesn't seem, it seems counterintuitive. Like, well, haven't we moved past that? But I stay engaged by just learning from other people, and I've never really felt like I'm an instructor more than I have the opportunity to go get some other training along with other people and practice in buildings that I can't do, back at home, and sharing information. And I always walk away learning. Teaching is the best way to learn.
Absolutely.
And so that keeps me going.
Good. I got a couple to throw at you. Dirk Janiak said, unfortunately, our department did spend a lot of money on a propane gas prop, fake smoke, and a safety fan that comes on at 300 degrees Celsius. Reason is the cancer exposure to the instructors and students. Not much realism in that, though. And that's the challenge a lot of places are facing, is how to do realistic training and keep it safe. So, but it's tough.
Yeah, and we have one of those type of propane props, and it's actually like, you can use it for certain things. We've used it for some RIT operations and things like that to, have some heat or whatever. But as far as like fire extinguishment, it's like counterproductive. Go in there on a wide fog and there's a vent fan blowing out. There's no negative effects of using that stream, and you put on a straight or solid stream, and it seems a lot more challenging. You're not getting any results of steam banking down or decreased visibility. So it's a shot at making things realistic, but I do find those particular type of props being, counterproductive. Sure. I do want to roll back to your last question about staying motivated and engaged for yourself.
You go wherever you want. That's the best part of this.
I'm at a fairly busy engine for our fire department, and not many captains are at, with my time, choose to stay at a place like I'm at. So some people ask, like, hey, when are you going to be able to get out of here? And it's like, well, this is where I choose to be. I find it very motivating and to stay engaged when I'm working with other people that are motivated and staying engaged. And those people are generally not hanging it up and going somewhere slower. And not a knock on people that decide to go somewhere slower if they're, if they've got other things in their life where it's going to make their quality of life better, as long as they're still doing their job.
Sure.
But I do like being at a place where I'm still getting work, yes. We're going to fires. That's always a good team builder. I'm working with people that want to be busy, and it just makes my job a lot easier. I show up and go to calls, and they're going to clean the tools. They're going to want to go to work. You're going to check your bottle like you're going to a fire because you might be going to one. And it really does keep me engaged and motivated.
I love that. Yes, man. The house you're at and the people you work with, they are the oxygen to the fire that is your passion, man. 100%. Jasper Miller says, our department is looking to transition from 1 3/4 to 2 inch for our high-rise packs. What are your thoughts? And I know you kind of touched on this, but he threw it at me, so I thought I'd throw it at you.
Well, like I said, it depends on what you want to do. It's an improvement. No doubt you'll be flowing more water if you have larger hose and a lower pressure or larger nozzle. You're going to be flowing more water. So it's an improvement. And I mean, the FDNY just went to 2-inch for just their lead length. I think the lead length, if if mobility is what you're after, it doesn't have to be the entire stretch. The lead length is what's going to be the part that you're using the most. That's the part that's kind of moving. Everything else is kind of staying in place. When it gets to 2.5, like I said, it gets to be much more difficult, but depending on your building types, if you have a lot of high-rise commercial buildings. So imagine if it's not even a high-rise. You just have a large open floor plan target. Is a 2-inch the right choice for that type of fire? And don't rely on sprinkler systems. Some of the most disastrous fires in this country have happened in sprinkler buildings. I mean, one Meridian Plaza was a sprinkler building, but a lot of it was shut down for maintenance or what have you. So it's a balance between user friendliness and the volume of water.
Right.
More water's, it's not always going to extinguish fire faster because it may just be too difficult to move around, and now they're shutting down the bail more than keeping it open. And a more maneuverable line isn't always going to extinguish fire faster because you may get to your finish line and you just don't have enough water for the volume of fire. So I do think the 2.25 is very, very promising there. So I would say take a close look at 2.25 before you make that commitment.
And I will just piggyback on top of Daryl and say we initially went with 2-inch to look at for our mid-rise packs. We really don't have true high rises, and so we were doing it for our mid-rise packs. And now we are switching to 2.25 here a few years later, if that gives you any indication of what we thought of it. So there we go. The questions to Daryl Liggins. So now I'm going to move you to books that you think firefighters should be reading. I got a sneak preview already, so.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, that book it's hard to get. I looked it on eBay. It's like hundreds of dollars. I don't know why fire engineering doesn't have more in print or something. I'm sure there's a story there. But if you do get your hands on a fire stream management handbook, if you're tuning into this, you're obviously interested in fire stream. So that'd be good. And I think most people watching this have heard of, the John Norman Fire Officer's Handbook of Tactics.
Yes.
We've heard that. But one book that was told to me by a good friend, Josh Materies, in the Seattle Fire Department, it's called The Culture Code.
Nice.
I wish I read this a long time ago. It's about the culture of a lot of successful businesses, teams. Everything has a culture. Families have a culture. Stations have a culture. Sports teams have a culture. And like I said earlier, I didn't really understand the power of that culture when making the change. And I think it's something that, it's a good read. I haven't finished it yet. I'm not a reader. I'm not a bookworm. I'm usually reading periodicals or things to just try and learn something for instead of just like stories. But this is a good one, and it's right in line. It's perfectly in line with how to implement change or improvements in your organization, because that's your biggest battle is the culture. The administration you can convince with the other topics we talked about earlier, pay and implementation and things like that. But at the end of the day, you got to invest in the people that are going to be using that stuff.
Absolutely.
You got to convince that.
And Culture Code, I think it's Coil, right? Coil, I believe that's the name. I've been doing that from memory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Coil, maybe?
Coil, yeah. Yeah, close. We're really close.
Here's another one.
Okay.
This periodical, I didn't know about till I went to Oakland and Jay Camelli told me about. I think a lot of you know New York City's WNYF. That's a quarterly magazine by New York. I think there's digital copies out there now.
Okay.
That's a good magazine where they review equipment and fires and things like that. There's another book called the Checklist Manifesto, and it's about what airline pilots do prior to flight. And I do think with engine operations, I'm usually mentally thinking in that checklist way. We know Sully Sullenberger,
Right?
He came to my firehouse actually.
Awesome.
Sully Sullenberger, he's a tall guy. He successfully landed that plane on the Hudson by sticking to this checklist in an emergent situation. It's awesome. And he doesn't take self-credit. He said he lives in my hometown, and I went to his homecoming thing, and Sully said, I was just doing my job. It was this homecoming speech with the high school band playing and everything. And he just said he was just doing his job. He's just following this checklist. But, that's a humble response. But we are following a checklist. If I have low pressure in a line, do I have a clogged nozzle? Do I have kinks in line? Did the door close on the line? Is the rig nut and pump? If I lose water, did the line burst? Is there a solid clog? Did we run out of water? Did the engine fail to go on pump? I have to be able to think of the checklist of how to solve this problem that we may have occurred. And if you don't, it's just very difficult to think under pressure.
Absolutely.
And that said, I remember a grocery store checker. We were getting groceries, and she said, "Oh boy, you guys, what a job! You have a lot of tough decisions to make." And I felt like we don't really make decisions. Most of those decisions are already made. We're following an algorithm, or however we've already kind of predetermined some of these things. So, yeah. Anyway, long-winded answer, but the Checklist Manifesto is a pretty good read.
I love it. No, I every time I ask people, I get a book I haven't heard of. I've not added the checklist, and now we'll add it to the books to be read. So thank you for that one. All right. Every week we have a thing on here called the 5 Questions for Firefighters. I have a lot of fun with it. It is 5 questions repeated every week. The questions are 100% your opinion, and the points are completely arbitrary, given out by me. So, Daryl Liggins, are you ready for the 5 questions for firefighters?
Let's do it.
All right, here we go. Number 1. What is the number one issue facing the modern fire service?
The number one issue. I think I jotted something down. Let me take a look at my notes here real quick.
You're already getting good points for having notes.
Well, I said stretched too thin. The fire services, with budget cuts of cities, as fast as a lot of cities are growing, fire departments are not growing their fire department as rapidly as a lot of cities are. And then a lot of larger cities are cutting back on fire suppression. And I think we're just asked to do a lot, with very little. So I think that's still going to continue to be the biggest challenge. Is it's getting stretched too thin. We're doing more, and we're rarely going to get more people or more companies, but we could be asked to do more.
No, absolutely. I love that answer because I think about, the term, the boombergs, the mini boombergs that Chief Thompson talks about in his book and in his presentations, but he talks about the growth and the explosion of growths in suburbia, but yet the fire departments are not exploding with that same growth.
No, not at all.
So that's a great answer. Love it. Max points on question 1. Number 2, what is the thing you are most excited about for the future of firefighting?
Well, I think we have so many great young motivated people that are branching out and getting, they're really getting into the weeds of a lot of different areas. So, we have like Dennis Legier's Hydrants to Nozzles group on Facebook. We have, Dragonetti has his, elevator group, and you can, the speed at which we can share information, and maybe I'm talking about the present, not the future, but this is just going to allow departments and firefighters to, you know, dispel a lot of the myths. Like
Yes.
when I came in, smoothbore nozzles. Well, this isn't New York. It's like, okay. But now we can really share a lot of information rapidly. And I think it's just a tremendous benefit. And and I guess with the future, I think there's just going to be a lot more smaller conferences and a lot more access to conferences, keeping costs low and keeping the training quality very high. I think that's the kind of the trend, and I think we're just going to see a lot more of that.
No, and it's crazy how you can, like, not in a bad, you can throw a rock and hit quality training that's available near you. You know, it's insane that just did not exist. I almost say 5 years ago, but 10 years ago it didn't exist at all. So,
well, and some of these, motivated people that, they want to do it, but just had no understanding of how to do it.
right,
Can share information so quickly and
get it out there. Yes.
and they can believe in themselves because they see it being done other places. It's like, let's do that here.
No, and like the Revolutionary Fire Tactics at Lake, I just got my registration to go this year, 2021. So I'm very excited. I was picking the classes I was going to go to, but yeah, excited. Okay, sorry, you got me talking. So that means you got max points. But anytime you get me talking, number 3, the best rank or position to be in the fire service.
Oh boy, it's hard to miss the tiller bucket. It's hard to beat that position. I didn't get to do it very much, but when I did get the tiller, it was always like the best seat in the house. I love that. But is it the best position? The best position I think is I'm a company officer, and it's felt like my best position so far. And that's because I can really influence where the rubber meets the road more so than I could if I was an engineer or a firefighter. As a firefighter, very satisfying when you're at a fire, but most of the time that's not what we're doing. And sometimes you have to motivate the officer to do something because you don't have that ability. You're not empowered with that ability to go do some of the things. So when the department empowers you with that, you feel that you got to do something positive with it. So company officer, you're a working supervisor. So I feel like it's the best of both worlds. I could go to work and, hands-on and dirty when I need to, but it's not always the best job because you have to know people. And, it's not black and white like tillering or not to discredit the work a tiller's doing on the job. I'm not simplifying that position. But, an engineer, it's a little more black and white. So I'm going with company officer because you're working and supervising, and I think you can have the most influence on a call and overall on the job.
1,000%. Anybody who knows me knows the number one job, best job is company officer. So max points again. Although I love hearing people's different reasons for why different things go. So number 4, the best advice you have ever received.
The best advice I got was from Dave McGrail. He told me one time, when we were embarking on making changes and we were on the phone a lot, be satisfied with, well, it's not satisfied, but somewhat be satisfied with the 70% you were able to accomplish. And don't be hindered by the 30% you were not able to accomplish.
Ooh, yeah.
We're not going to get everything we want, nor should we get everything we want. Or how would we have an organization if everybody got what they want?
No doubt.
But at the same time, what he meant by being satisfied with that is, remember, every day you're on a red fire engine going down the streets with lights and sirens, that there were thousands of people envying being in the position you're in. And if you're having such a bad day because you don't have a smoothbore nozzle on the line you want, or the line size isn't what you wanted, you are letting your career pass you by and you're not enjoying the job. Enjoy the job, okay? And try and seek improvements along the way. And don't let those other, don't let the peanut gallery or the naysayers, get you down, because Sometimes they get their way, and sometimes you're able to make the improvements that your committee or whoever is seeking. So, you just keep pushing forward, and, we'll never be totally satisfied.
Sure.
But I don't know if there's ever an end game for that, but I do thank Dave for putting perspective on that.
No, and as human beings, we're so prone to focus on that 20% or that 30% that like, why aren't they on board, or why didn't it go this? We are prone to focus on that and lose the joy of the 70% that we did get. So,
well, I remember, retired Chief Jerry Tracy from the FDNY, he gave a leadership class in our area, and he said something that stuck with me is, does everybody on your job hold the same flame of passion as you do? And it's like, no. Everybody came in for different reasons. Some wanted to be a firefighter since they were a kid, and their family of firefighters. Some people, it's like, hey, I had a pension and the pay's awesome, and everybody has something different, and not everybody has that same motivation. Some people lost it along the way. Some people gained it along the way, but you can't expect everybody to want to go out there, stretch hose, flow water every single day. You're gonna kill them, and you might lose some along the way. So you got to realize that about people.
Nice. Final question: heavy fire and searchable space. Would you rather be assigned to the nozzle or first in on VES?
That's an easy one for me. I want to be on the nozzle, but I want to be on the nozzle for a few reasons. I do think, Ray McCormick gave a brass tacks hard facts about, what it takes to be a good nozzleman. And it's the tip of the spear. It's the most satisfying position. Even though I'm the officer, I'm usually behind the nozzle firefighter. It's where I want to be, but it's also the most effective thing on the fire ground. There's nothing that makes a bigger difference than that initial attack hand line. It's taking care of so many problems. The people trapped in that room to do VS, they're trapped by fire. The smoke production is by fire. The building weakening is by fire. The exposure problem is that fire.
There
so it's the most important thing on the fire ground is that initial line. So it's satisfying and it's effective.
So you would say, as the first line goes, the fire goes? Definitely a believer. All right.
Absolutely.
I love it. There it is, guys. The 5 questions for firefighters, according to Daryl Liggins. Thank you, sir, for doing that for me. Always fun. I love hearing people's opinions on it. So there is the scrap. What is the best place to contact you to book a class, reach out, get information? Is there anything you have coming up, or go for whatever?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've never tried to make a name for myself, so I haven't marketed myself or made web pages or anything like that. You can, if you want to call me, you can send me a text to 510-919-3739. That's my cell phone number. My email address is my full name, Daryl Liggins @icloud.com. I hope to be at FDIC this year. I'm sure I'll be at HROC there, and we're trying to do that in February. We'll see if that happens.
I should be there. If it goes down, I'll see you there, and I'll shake your hand, and we'll have a local IPA from Florida.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, you can find me. Facebook is probably a good way too. I often get some Facebook Messenger messages after a Google Hangout or whatever we call it, a hump day hangout there with fire engineering. I often get some messages, but please don't be shy. Ask questions. I may not have the answer, but it may inspire me to try and figure out what the answer is or ask those questions. So
awesome, man. You have been an unbelievably fun guest. I've loved picking your brain, and of course your insight has been fun, and you fielded questions well from everybody. Coming up on the scrap, I'm looking at my thing. We've got Garrett Rice as the next guest, followed by James Gearing, and then the one and only Kurt Isaacson, and that's the rest of January kind of playing out in front of us. So it's going to be a good year. Yeah. Kicked off with Daryl Liggins today, man. So thank you, sir, for being. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I started off and I didn't kind of come full circle why I'm here in a hotel.
Oh, yeah, go.
Yeah. Unfortunately, my wife came down with COVID while I was away on a long stretch at work. That's why I was there for so long. And it turned out that the time she got exposed, I was already away. So I haven't been in contact with her. So now I find myself, I need to let her quarantine at home, but she's healthy. She was throwing around some kettlebells and a barbell today. She's feeling fine. We're just going
Good,
to
good.
go back to work for these 4 days. She'll hopefully take a negative test, and then I could get back home. But
Right.
it was nice to have a beer. I'm glad to have shared a beer with everybody here and yourself. But everybody's healthy and happy. We'll just let that time and be safe for me and my community and family and my coworkers. Uh, and kick it in a hotel for a night.
Not too shabby. And then you go back to work for 4 days. Is that what you said coming up? A 96-hour shift, or what are you working? You working?
We went to a 48.96 last year. It's been working out. Most people like it.
Okay.
So then I'm working 2 overtime shifts
Gotcha.
to help with the model I'm doing.
Gotcha.
So,
Okay. Well, hopefully the quarantine goes smooth and you get back home and everything works out good, man. So, unbelievably,
thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
thank you so much for being guest number 67 on the Weekly Scrap. To everybody who watched live, thank you for the comments. Thank you for the questions. I hope the tone stays silent. Unless it's burning, stay safe out there. Thank you, sir.